All right, let's get back to our discussion here with Professor Macharia Munene. You mentioned that there's a likelihood that oil prices might be adjusted or
they'll be affected.
It would be affected, actually.
Yes,
that's the word I'm looking for. But
yeah.
the other Arab countries have blamed Qatar of being associated or being a sympathizer to terror. Do you think this is justified, and is there more than meets the eye to this particular field?
There is more than meets the eye. It's not the first time that Qatar may have been involved in supporting various movements in different countries. And it has been. It was known to be involved in the overthrow of governments in the Libya situation. It was known to have had discussions with Assad and then deferred. So it has been very assertive in the last 5 years or so. And that assertiveness itself rubs some countries the wrong way.
The wrong way.
If you notice that it is accused of being friendly to the Muslim Brotherhood. And Muslim Brotherhood is the one that was overthrown by the current government of Egypt. So there is bad blood as long as that is continuing. It's been known to maybe inspire people, some movements that may be very critical of the existing governments, particularly the autocratic ones. Now, its neighbor, Saudi Arabia, which is very strong on controlling domestic matters, if there is a movement going on, inspired in part, the claim is made, by Al Jazeera. And you know, Qatar has become so powerful, media powerful, with the Al Jazeera reaching everywhere.
Yeah.
And the opinions coming from Al Jazeera can be disturbing to some of the countries which do not like some of the broadcasters. In fact, the Saudis and others are claiming that Al Jazeera is a propaganda armpit of the Qatar trying to overthrow government. So there is a lot of this thing. But there is that claim that it is not as hostile to Iran as it should be. And because there is that desire to rally everybody against Iran.
And speaking of Iran, Iran is blaming the U.S. for what is happening because it says that the U.S. is trying to split the Arab nations. Just happens just a few days after Donald Trump was in the neighborhood.
Yes.
What does this really mean?
Well, yeah, the Iranians and the Americans like insulting each other and blaming each other for everything. The Arabs are already split. I mean, they don't need to be somebody else to
don't need an extra hand.
But if it came, it may be... Well, it has been split, and the impression created by Donald Trump is that he wants all Arabs, not just Arabs, all Muslims to be on one side against what he calls terror, the Islamic terror. And Iran is one of the countries that is targeted in that respect. There is the question of whether Qatar is supportive of Hamas, and that in itself is because they have offices in the place. So the idea of splitting the Arabs really is not a big issue because they're already split. The challenge has been, can they be brought together? And the fact that Qatar has been punching above its weight, actually it overshadows Saudi Arabia, it overshadows Egypt. It even overshadows Iran itself. Yeah. Yet it is such a tiny place with only 250 or so thousand citizens. The rest are foreigners or workers, including some Kenyans in the place. So the country is run in a peculiar way, and people look at it, where does it get this power? The oil money is a factor. Yeah. It also has very good PR because that's what it is. And the leadership from as of 1995, when there was a bloodless coup and they took over, has been going out of its way to market Qatar as a place to be.
Okay. So how will this feud and the decision made by all these other Gulf countries affect the war on terror?
Well, if they are quarreling, one of the things that's likely to happen is that Qatar will become very isolated. To make matters worse for it, it hosts the U.S. Central Command in the place. So it has a big U.S. military base, 10,000 troops in the place. How they mix is a challenge because Qatar would not want to be fighting with the U.S. when it has such a big contingency of the military in the place. So the war on terror is likely to be affected in the sense that there may be no concerted effort. If Qatar and its neighbors are quarreling on who is responsible for what, and yet they're supposed to be friends, it may be a problem.
Yeah.
And in fact, some of the terror groups have been getting weapons and supplies from various countries. And will that now increase the weaponization of the terror groups? It's likely to be, because as each side supports its supposed friend.
We know Sudan has offered to mediate in this particular row. The U.S. has asked the Gulf Cooperation Council to step in. But who would be best placed to act as arbiter in this particular row?
Certainly to not be Iran. And Sudan is an interesting one to come up, because Qatar has itself acted as a mediator in Sudanese challenges like Darfur.
Yeah.
And I don't know whether Sudan is in a place to really mediate, because the question is, who is being mediated now? It is mainly Saudi Arabia and Qatar. Because Egypt, yes, it's a bit far. Iran across is not an issue. So it's really Saudi Arabia and Qatar, the other Bahrain little states. Those are not the issue. So Qatar and Saudi Arabia need to come together. Who is it that can bring them together? It's a difficult one. Maybe the U.S. can try to do that. And I think Secretary of State Rex Tillerson has downplayed the whole issue. So I think the U.S. is in a position to bring these two together and say, hey, cut down on this thing, because it's not good for the U.S. in the long run. So the U.S. can do that.
The U.S. would be best placed.
Would be best placed to do that.
Okay.
Yes.
There are very many Kenyans who work in Qatar and the Middle East countries. Let's just bring it back home. Is there a cause for worry for those who have relatives living there, or even the ones who are living there and working there?
There is cause for concern. If the Qatari economy starts plummeting because of the sanctions that are being imposed, then the jobs that people enjoy there as foreign workers, because that's what they are, may be cut down. And some of them may be laid off. And they may not have it as good as they've been having. So that's a source of concern. To the extent that the Qatari tycoons invest in Kenya, because we have courted them to invest. The Emir visited Kenya some years ago and committed to invest. Our president has been to Qatar. They discussed these things. So there is, cause, whenever there is instability in a country, the citizens of a certain particular country need to be worried. And the Kenyan government need to take interest and ensure that Kenyans who are there, at least, are not affected in case things go haywire. And there is a possibility. The Saudis have already cut off the supply line. And that's the food supply line. And that's a serious matter. Because if it continues for a long time, then mainly the foreigners, the 1.8 million foreigners are likely to be affected in a very negative way. And among the first to be fixed, if there is need for that, will be black people, the Africans.
The Africans.
Yes, before they go to the other, to the neighboring Arabs. It happens all the time. So there is reason for concern. Kenya and any other African country that has citizens working in that country, and even in the neighboring one, to see how they can be assisted in case the need arises.
In the morning, I was reading an article that residents, those who are living in Qatar, have already started hoarding. They're shopping in bulk because they're worried about.
Yeah, so they're shopping and keeping those long-lasting foods that don't get rotten very quickly because of what is going on. And there has also been people have been told to move out. If you are in the Qatari and you are in Saudi Arabia, get out. And the things are not good. And that's why there should be intervention, particularly from the U.S., which has seemingly leverage on both sides. And then say, cut down. So there is likely to be a shortage, not for the elite, but for the others.
For the common man.
let's say for the foreigners. Because if you have only citizens that are less than 300,000, that one they can take care of. But the 1.7, 1.8 million people who are foreign workers are the ones who are going to have problems in the long run.
Prof, thank you. Always a pleasure speaking to you here
Thank
on
you.
Worldview. Professor Macharia Munene is an international affairs expert here, just helping us dissect the issues or the row that is currently being witnessed in the Gulf states. And of course, this is a